All right, hello everyone. I think we're just about ready to begin. First of all, happy Fredericton Pride. We're happy to have you all here tonight. And welcome to our QHINB panel this year, titled A History of Drag in New Brunswick. I'm Adam Schwartz. I'm a student intern for the Queer Heritage Initiative right now. We're a non-profit organization which collects documents, oral history, ephemera, anything related to the 2S LGBTQIA+ community in New Brunswick, our organizations, and our people. We were founded in 2015-2016, and the collection is housed here at the Provincial Archives in Fredericton. QHINB also has a mandate to provide educational sessions to the public on the queer history of our province, which we do through panels such as these at Pride festivities around the province. So I've been working for QHINB for about a month and a half now, and it's been a great privilege to be a part of the exciting work that we're doing. Just last night, for example, we collaborated with Solo Chicken Theatre to hold a Zoom panel with survivors of the military purge here in Canada, which is a fantastic opportunity to hear from our queer elders directly. We have also been receiving some incredible international attention recently with the news that Elliot Page's production company has taken an interest in the story of Len and Cub, a queer couple who lived here in New Brunswick in the early 20s. Thank you. And there's more to come as well. This summer we're hoping to create a QHINB website which will allow us to share the materials of our collection with the public. So it's an extremely exciting time for all of us here at the Queer Heritage Initiative, and we're happy to be able to share our queer joy here with you tonight. Before we begin, it's important to acknowledge that we are gathered here this evening on the banks of the Wolastoq River and on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples. QHINB acknowledges and pays respects to the elders and their descendants, and we honor their knowledge as we work to develop closer relationships with Indigenous peoples on this land. There's also a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. Please note that the panel is being filmed and will be put on our social medias later. An accessible, gender-neutral single-stall washroom is available. It's on the first floor here to the right of the elevator, so if you leave this room and then take your first right, you'll find it right in there. Outside of the room here tonight, we have some merch available for purchase. All of the proceeds are going to our organization to help us raise funds for our work and programming events such as these, as well as funding our website. I hope you'll join us at the end for some light refreshments. Now I'm going to introduce our moderator and president of QHINB, Meredith Batt. So, Meredith grew up in Sackville-Moncton, New Brunswick, and St. John's, Newfoundland. They graduated with a BA in History from Université de Moncton in 2018 and work as an archivist here at the Provincial Archives. They are the president of the Queer Heritage Initiative of New Brunswick, an archival initiative which collects the history of 2S LGBTQIA+ people across the province. They co-authored Len and Cub, A Queer History, published in April 2022 by Gooseling Editions. Their writing has appeared in Extra Magazine, Active History, and the Canadian Historical Review. In October 2022, they received the Platinum Jubilee Medal for their work in preserving queer history and for public education. When they aren't busy writing, they can be found biking the trails of Fredericton or paddling a kayak on the Wolastoq River. I'm going to hand my microphone over to Meredith, who will introduce our panelists, and then we'll be ready to begin.
Thank you, Adam. That's so great. Awesome. So wonderful to be here this evening and to see you, everybody, out. We changed it up this year. We usually hold our events at the Beaverbrook, and so I'm so happy that folks found us here at the on campus, and here at the archives, which is the real home of QHINB. It's where our collection is held. And as Adam noted, it's steadily growing. We now have about up to just over 20 sous-fonds or sub-collections. So, and it's so nice to see some folks in the audience too who have donated stuff to us over the years. So if you are interested in donating, if you have archival records, so documents, posters of past events, letters, other things like that, please get in touch with us. And there's some information out at the table in the front, but I'll stop talking about that because I'd like to let our lovely panelists talk this evening. So we're talking about a history of drag. So tonight's going to be a fairly contemporary look at drag, but we do have some things that should be, if it works out well, flashing behind me in a few seconds. And we have some photos from the 1960s that we're going to be sharing tonight. So you all get a chance to see those. Those aren't held here at the archives, unfortunately, but they're held at the archives in Toronto, so that Canada's LGBTQ Q2S archives on Isabella Street. And so they're photos from the Royal Tavern and also from the Admiral Beatty Hotel, which you may remember. So I'm going to get each of my panelists to introduce themselves, but I'd like to start with John, if you don't mind going first. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm John, also known as Venom Devine, and I've been doing drag for 20 years in a week and a day. Yep.
Amazing.
And yeah, I grew up in St. John, well, outside of St. John. Small, very small community. And then moved here after I graduated high school.
Great. And you also sometimes work at Monarch?
Yeah, I work at Monarch volunteering and doing random things, and then I also work up at the hill here, actually.
Great. Awesome. And you have a long history of performing?
Yeah, 20 years almost of performing and watching all of the newer drag personas emerge, and it's fantastic to see.
Great. Awesome. Annabelle?
Hi everyone, I'm Annabelle. I'm also Barb Wire. I've been doing drag in Brunswick for about 5 years now. Barb turned 5 this spring, so she's ready for kindergarten. I have also done archival work, and I was a UNB alumni. I've worked at this archives for a summer. I worked with the Loyalist collection. I worked with a shirt project about early modern recipes and built a database using archival. So I feel you, and thank you for your work. It's really boring. And then you find a nugget.
And then you find a nugget.
And then it makes it worth it, and that's why you keep going. But
certainly the QHINB collection is the highlight.
I want to go digging in there. And now I'm a full-time drag artist and fiber artist, and I'm also a substitute teacher part-time, and I'm also an assessor for Rainbow Registered, which is an accreditation program with the Government of Canada.
That's awesome.
Those are my current employments.
That's great. Thanks. Alex?
My name is Alex Saunders. I have been performing for 14 years on August 12th of this year as Justin Toodeep. Let me look at your sheet. That's why I sat next to you, Meredith. Okay, so that's how long I've been doing drag. That's my drag name. Other stuff I do. So I also do, I work as a full-time drag artist, and I own my own production company named House of Toodeep Productions, where I run drag shows all over the province, plus in PEI and Nova Scotia. I was Boom King a long time ago.
Ooh. Wow. Yes, you were.
But other than that, I work at Old Navy a couple of days a week to get me out of the house, because working out of your own home is maddening. But before that, I used to be an IT professional, specializing in quality assurance in various different industries up until the pandemic, and then I got laid off, and then drag was the only thing that really there was money in, and before that I was a travel agent, and we all know how that went with being able to book your own vacations online. Not as lucrative as it used to be back in the day, and so now other than that, my spare time is spent annoying people that call me pedophile for reading to children, and in general being a menace to cisgendered heterosexual society.
That's a full-time job.
It is. Yeah. Oh, and I'm a proud father of 4 cats.
Wonderful.
Meredith, I forgot to mention something.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm also the French Acadian chair member for Fredericton Pride. I
Very
forgot to mention that. So all the French events this year, that's all me. Please come. They're fun.
And this is the first year that there's probably distinct Acadian events?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just a fun story. When we were starting to plan the week in February, I asked the Pride Board, I was a brand new member, I said, can I have one event? And they said, what about a whole day? And I was like, okay. So there's technically 2 days. So
Amazing. Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah. And just so that we'll plug these events now before we forget, what events are you doing?
So what day are we today? Tuesday? So Thursday at the Centre Communautaire Saint-Anne up the road, we're showing Yann Étoile, which is a documentary about Angèle Arsenault, who was a lesbian singer, folk singer, and l'Acadie queer, and through a young trans man who's in a band. I am biased, I'm in it, but I look wonderful in it. And it feels like a warm hug. You might cry, but it's done with respect and love. So I will let you know. And then on Friday night on the Greens, we have the festival tent from Sweltering Songs. They lent this to me on Friday. So I'm throwing a 5 à 7. So if you're not big on partying and that's more your vibe, we have that. And then after that, we're doing a party cuisine, a proper party cuisine with some drag queens and kings. So it's going to be very fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a blast.
We're going to see some lip syncs to some Acadian songs.
Ça va
I don't know if you've ever
fantastic.
seen that, but it's worth it. Oh, and the documentary has English subtitles, so everybody can understand everything.
Perfect. That's great. Awesome. Okay, and our last but not least.
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Andy. I also go by Damion Danger. I've been doing drag for just over 3 years, to be 4 in September. I grew up in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, and I moved up to New Brunswick back in like 2010. And that's a whirlwind experience, and I am I'm the black sheep of my family. Coming from a line of like tradesmen and stuff. I took the art route, so I do graphic art on the side other than drag. I participate in a lot of like artistic activities, and I try to get involved a lot with the community, and I try to be as activist as possible. I'm all in it for the passion.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy. And it's so great to have everyone here. Alex, my first question is going to be directed at you. So I know you said you started doing drag in 2019 and that the community, you started in St. John, right? And that the community, and I'm talking about the drag community, was a little bit closed-minded. So how were you able to find your place as a king? And what was the drag scene like at the time? And what were your influences for getting going?
So, my influence for starting drag, so there's a little program called RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. But the first season came out in 2009. And when I say closed-minded, I guess I mean like there was no mention of like, because I was a woman at the time, there was no mention of like women doing drag, like female drag, the way Barb does. It just didn't exist back then from what I could find, all of my various Googling, because you have to remember that like back then, drag wasn't as widespread. So wigs were really expensive because they were like human hair wigs for like human hair ladies, or really cheap, being Halloween quality, awful wigs. So it was a lot more, I don't know. It was a lot more performers being stuck firmly in their gender binary. And even the queens were slightly different. The queens in St. John were all based on this concept of realness, where the idea was to look as authentically female as possible and not in like a drag way. So it was a lot of like real girl lashes and clothes that you would get from the shopping mall, and keeping in mind that what you could get from the shopping mall at the time was all there was. There was no internet, so you could never order like, well, I mean, I guess you could, but it was sketchy at the time. A lot of making things at home or altering things and things like that. The makeup was very natural, very like, when I say that, I mean like feminine techniques used on just a standard, I guess, male face. So it wasn't so much the kind of fluid idea of drag that we have now, or even, I guess, the more draggy aspect of drag, a la Jackie Beat or any of the Queen, Devine, where she had her eyebrows like way up to the middle of her head and things like that. It wasn't really like that. So carving out a place as a king, I didn't really have any guidance. So I kind of had to go on what I found online, which was limited, extremely limited information. And then just kind of like figuring out what my version of drag was. So the thing that I would get criticized on a lot in my early career was like, oh, you don't do as much as we do. Because I remember back in the day, like, I cut up some doll hair and stuck it to my upper lip with like glue and called it a day. Like, there was no contouring. There was no, like, the hair was just a ponytail pulled back into a little 7 of 9 bun. If you're familiar with Star Trek, you know, a baggier t-shirt. So it wasn't anything like it. I like to call it my toxic masculinity. So drag kings follow a natural evolution, and that first stage is always toxic masculinity. And you can tell how new a drag king is based on how toxically masculine he is. So watch for that. You'll find that that's almost always true. And then from there they go in a variety of directions. But so then I started looking at drag queens and thinking, so I have this criticism where I don't do as much as they do. Well, what if I just applied all the techniques of drag to masculine drag? So then I started, you know, layers upon layers upon layers of makeup, lashes, maybe not as big as like feminine 301 lashes, but certainly I did go through a few 301 phase.
We all do.
Was terrible because I didn't know how to put them on at the time, so they'd go like this a lot. Heather Silk really helped me with that. But yeah, so eventually it got to the point where the new criticism was not directed at me. It was like, I've never seen a drag king that does as much as you do. They're lazier than you are. So then the insult was more directed at my community and not so much at me. Like I was this random, like, special little snowflake that just wore all the right makeup to be respected equally. And I guess earning that equal respect among certain performers over the years afforded me this privilege where eventually I could give back to my other kings, and now I'll go to places like Halifax and I'll have all these kings that will tell me randomly that I inspired their thing and that now they get paid because of me, because I'm also a big mouthpiece, if you haven't figured that out by looking at my social media and my activism work. But yeah, so it's kind of come full circle. But at the start, everyone was really firmly rooted in their binary, at least in St. John. And that's not to like, oh God, this is going to go up on the internet. I'm still afraid of some of those queens who are still alive. So
no, but you'd say it would be like, you know, everywhere.
Yeah.
And across the province, probably too.
Absolutely.
And I would argue that that's still here.
Yeah.
In fact, we've slipped back a little bit. At one point in time, people wouldn't dare cast a show without at least one drag king. And now there's a lot of like shows that are not as diverse, and not just a disparity between kings and queens, but also like we're a very white province, and so there's a lot of disparity with like representing our BIPOC communities and so on and so forth. So you know, I think that every show, every performer who has the pleasure of being able to do this, whether it be professional or semi-professional or just for fun or whatever you're doing it for, if you're going to produce a show, you should be taking time to make space for everyone and not just saying, hey, everyone's welcome, but in a proactive way where you're actively seeking out various diverse types of performers, whether that be trans performers, non-binary performers, drag things, you know, like horror performers, or everyone.
No, and I think that's really important too. And unfortunately, we'd approached Normani also to be on this panel too, who's a black, one of New Brunswick's only black drag performers right now, but hopefully not for much longer. You know, I know that they're a huge role model to to other queens and kings. I just want to turn to John now. So you've been, a little couple years more than Alex, but as a
very
kid,
old in drag years.
Yes, but as a kid growing up, in Grove Hill and St. John, what were your first experiences with drag?
First experiences with drag was probably on TV, like Mrs. Doubtfire type thing. Where I grew up, because it was in such a small community, it was outside of St. John, it was Grove Hill. So we didn't have any representation of drag culture or anything. So what you could see on late night TV or like Bugs Bunny when they were doing drag and things like that would have been the only places that I saw any drag growing up, until the first time that I ever did drag is when I met actual other drag people. And my drag that time, not the best. I'm just saying. It was quite atrocious. But I went from that and learned through years to what I am now. But like growing up there, it was very secluded almost from anything to LGBTQIA+. Like there was just nothing. It wasn't really spoken about or anything either. So yeah.
And you said your first time in drag was at the St. John Pride Parade.
It
the
was.
Very first one.
Yes, I looked very bad. But it's a stepping point.
Stepping point, yeah.
And that was the first time I had ever done drag. And the reason that I originally did it was because I was not out to any of my family except for my cousin. So we went to their place and thinking, hey, I'm going to walk in the parade, but I don't want my family to know because they don't know. So got ready at their place, and then we walked the parade. And the shoes, not a smart idea. They were very bad. Like, again, first time doing drag. So
You
it was
wanted
like,
to feel the fantasy.
I did, and it was more of a nightmare than anything. But, like that was the first experience in drag as well. And the first time that I actually saw another drag performer in real life was at that as well. And they were really nice. They were like, you're doing great. Which, completely fine, because I knew I looked like a train wreck, but they were still really kind to me. And yeah.
And you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. And everyone has to start somewhere. Like, and because of the fact where I was starting, we didn't really have any role models to look up to. So you didn't have like a drag
YouTube
mother.
tutorials.
YouTube? But yeah, like you'd have to go and like search as best as you can on any platform you can for like contouring, makeup tutorials, brow blocking, and random things like that. And I was young. I did not do the thing. But I've learned over the years. And I've been so lucky to be able to say that I've seen all of you start.
Yeah, that has to feel pretty amazing.
And like seeing what they started it with to like where they are now, loving it. It's like chef's kiss.
So when did you start performing?
It would probably have been a couple of years after the very first time that I did drag. So, oh God. Yeah, a couple of years afterwards. And it was not necessarily in a very public place. Go over to my friend's place and do the things, and then we lip sync to some songs, and it was fun.
Nice.
But it took a while for me to like actually start up doing like full like let's do a show. And one of the first times, it was probably like the third or fourth time, was at a Pride thing, because I was part of the Pride committee since it started, except for the last 3 years. 3 years? 2 years. It was either 2 or 3 years is when I finally stepped back out of the Pride Committee, because my term had been up for a very long time. I didn't want to leave because I love y'all. But the first year that we did a drag thing was because I was like, hey, drag is quite a big thing in the community itself. And we haven't really had it for, I think it had stopped being really seen in public around here, as at least, for about a year or two. And I was like, I really kind of miss it. And it was Pride season, so I was like, hey, how about we do some Pride things that are drag related or drag oriented? And so we did it, and they were like, hey, by the way, you're going to be hosting those events and performing in those events and judging those events. And I was like, that's
you
cool.
get to do it for free when you're on the board.
I'm not gonna lie, I've done drag. I aggravate Alex a lot because I volunteer my time way too much, but it's because of the fact that I love it so much and I want everybody else to shine, not necessarily just myself. I want everybody to shine. So.
Yeah, and have their chance in the spotlight, you were saying.
Yeah, I prefer to like, hey, this is our next performer. I'm going to scooch over here while they get all of this spotlight because they're amazing.
Wonderful. And you were also telling me a little bit, and so was Alex too, just about some past performers. Like, I think it was Trinity, was it Trinity Fox or...
in St. John, I grew up with Coco Chanel and Caramilk in St. John. Those were the two drag queens that I knew the best, and they were in all the shows at home. And then there was also a show, queen who was around for a while named LaGuardia Beaverhausen that I grew up, and Cinnamon, who is was kind of the generation before Coco and Caramilk.
So like early 2000s, late 90s?
No, so Coco and Caramilk would have been like 90s, and then Cinnamon was like 60 years old when I met her.
Oh, wow.
She has since passed on.
Okay.
But yeah, so she was quite... She still did drag up into her 70s, for sure. But she was like Spy Bar old, so that was a queer bar in St. John that preceded my... It was closed before I was old enough to get into the bar, let's just put it that way. And they used to host drag shows there, and there was a Miss Spy Bar for a really long time. And then that switched over. Well, St. John's had so many iterations of gay bars that have all like open and closed and open and closed. So just queens after queens. And then I met Brooke Rivers first before I met Venom. And I think Brooke was why I came to Fredericton. Like, she was how I found out about drag in Fredericton. And then through Boom, I met Venom, and then Trinity came up later, and then Rachel Lush, whose name used to be something inappropriate. So that's how long ago we did drag with her, because her name was Bad, and now it's not bad because we know better. But yeah, and then I don't know, who would you have known in Fredericton?
In Fredericton, I didn't actually catch their names, but in here, it would have been Julia Jeffries and Kitty Diamond. Do you remember Kitty Diamond?
No. I wish I did. She sounds interesting. I
haven't seen her perform in a very long time. I don't even know if she performs anymore.
Natasha N. She was from Halifax.
Okay.
But she used to come down here all the time with Rouge Fatale, who's a famous drag queen in Halifax, who taught me everything I know about producing and running drag shows.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me because she's amazing. Rouge, I mean.
Yeah.
Because there's El Noir as well.
Yes.
Which fantastic performer in person. So if you ever get a chance to see them perform, highly recommend.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I don't know if you know who I'm talking about when I say Vicky De La Vega.
I do, and you know what?
Do you?
She was living in St. Andrews. She came to our St. Andrews show and then gave me her phone number, and I lost it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this phone number, girl? I'm not going to text you. Get on Facebook. I'm sorry. I don't care how old you are. Get on Instagram or Facebook. Jesus.
Yeah, she's done a show with me before, and beautiful queen.
Yeah.
Beautiful queen. And definitely in the like late 80s, 90s, 2000s era for drag. So
that's amazing. Well, thanks for sharing that with us. That's actually really good to know. Annabelle, I want to talk about your drag beginnings. So you described yourself as a natural born performer. You used to perform for your parents.
Yeah, I used to force my parents to watch me perform in the living room a lot as a child. I put on plays, dance recitals. Funny, me and my best friend, who is now a trans mask lesbian, and I used to sing to each other the song Belle from Notre Dame de Paris, the Broadway musical. And we've listened to this song recently together and realized how raunchy it is. It's all about wanting to discover her garden. And I made my mom type those lyrics out for me so I could learn them. And me and my very queer friend used to sing that to each other in front of our parents as children. The call was coming from inside the house. So that's what I did. And then I saw when season 8 of Drag Race came on Netflix in Canada. It was our only season we had for many, many years. I was like, wow. And then I saw Kimchi was coming to Moncton at Triangles, which is no longer,
sadly, no longer
a bar, but that's my first queer bar I went to when I was old enough, because I'm from Moncton. And Kimchi shamed us, the audience, rightfully so. She said, who here is your first drag show? And most of us raised our hand, and she goes, that's nice. You need to go support your local queens and kings and performers. And I said, you know what, you're right. And then I met Venom, who showed me how I put fake nails on for the first time and was completely useless. And I was trying to do something with my phone and I couldn't. And Venom went, girl, use your knuckles. And that was my first interaction with a local drag performer.
We will help anybody out.
Truly. And then for a long time, I was like, I'm a woman. I was born a woman. I can't do this. I'm not allowed. For a really long time. And then I started making friends in the local community, and they're like, no, you can do whatever you want. There's no rules. Like, what you see on TV is not the end all of drag. So Barb was kind of born through that. And I think at the time, I was already an outsider in the community. I was a woman. So I really didn't want to push it too much. And there was no French drag in the province. There was none. So that's why I went very Anglophone name. I did a lot of only English songs for 1 to 2 years until I saw Moncton performers starting to do some Carmen Campagne lip syncs to Pas capable de tirer ma vache. And I was like, wait a second. Who are these people? How can I get involved? I need Acadian drag in my life. And that's where really Barb just skyrocketed and shined, because that is my favorite part of drag, is Acadian drag. Let me lip sync to Angèle Arsenault, please. Even if the audience in Fredericton just looks at me like. But I have found a trick. And I meant to tell you, ma tante, this trick. If you want to sell a French lip sync in Fredericton and actually get tipped, okay? If you do a top 40 English song, you will get tipped, no problem. But if you do a French song, the audience... But if you take the mic and give them the context first. So, Et c'est pas fini de Star Academy, that's a good example. I tell the audience, I'm like, listen, in early 2005, approximately, when American Idol was like the best TV show in the world, for some reason, Quebec did its own version. And then they made their own song. And then a New Brunswicker won. And then I give them all this context, and then I perform it, and people get into it. And that's been my trick.
And Celine Dion.
And my heart will go on. Yeah. So I think I went off script a little bit.
No,
I
that's
think
perfect.
I like as an English person consuming French drag, once you realize that French drag is totally its own different entity aside from English drag, you come to appreciate it more because it's very much based more in, I would say, traditional clowning. And I don't mean that in an offensive way, but it's just a lot of French humor is really based in this idea of traditional clowning, like over the top, absurdist sort of humor. So once you look at it from the lens at which it's supposed to be viewed, and you have that kind of like perspective on how the culture is supposed to be, it all of a sudden, well, from the very first second I ever consumed Acadian drag, I knew that it was something that was just so special to our region. And it just, once you view it from the lens it's supposed to be viewed from, it's a whole other experience. So I highly recommend the next time you see like Annabelle Goen or Sammy or any of the other Acadian people, kind of look at it from that perspective, and all of a sudden there's like layers and layers of stuff that you weren't picking up on before.
And if you have the opportunity to go to a small town Acadian show, those are the... I was in Caraquette this weekend and I did Moi Je Mange from Angèle Arsenault, and it's all about eating and eating and eating and being seen and playing with those, that women need to be a certain size and all of that. So I had a little purse with bacon in it because it was a brunch. And then I just started like feeding bacon to people like grapes in the audience. But the entire audience is Acadian. They know this song. They were singing along with me because they were really getting into it. And like, it's just so fun because we could also speak Chiac on the mic. Not French, Chiac. And that always feels really good.
That's fantastic. That's so wonderful. So go out Friday night and see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm making everyone do, so everyone else is allowed to do one song completely of their choice, but I'm forcing everyone to do at least one Acadian song because that's where the fun is.
Big time. Andy, I want to bring you into the conversation. And can you explain a little bit about how you developed Damion and how you got involved in drag?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm the baby of the group. I've only been doing it for a couple years. And when I started was when I like just turned 19. My birthday's in March. I literally started like that September. And literally like when I was 19, like the one thing I've always wanted to do, like I grew up in a Mokto, very close-minded community. And so as I got older, we used to travel downtown with my friends. And so as soon as I was 19, I was like, yo, I'm going out to the bars tonight. And I did not care. I was just like, new kid, new town, what's this? And I started making friends with like Corona Sempro, who used to be around here. You remember Tiny?
Yeah.
Yes. And
he was one of the kings from, he had won 1 year.
Yeah, Boom King 1 year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember judging those.
Back in the day, I can't remember what the last one was, but it was like just before I had started. I'm pretty sure like the year before.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's like all I heard about was, oh my god, that sounds like fabulous. And who else was it? I know like I started meeting you and Diane, who now owns the bar.
Yep.
And Pete and like all the DJs and stuff, and I was just like mesmerized, and it was just one of those like jaw drop moments. And so it was like Tiny, who had on my side, that like really pushed me to start doing drag. And at the time I was like kind of trying to figure out who I was, and I was not a confident person. I had like a theater background, and so I was just like, I don't know if I can do it, just kind of like off my corner and stuff, but I had a lot of support, which like really meant the world. So I wasn't out to like my family or anything as well. Like it was very like hush hush in my family. Not that they weren't supportive, but like they just, it was one of those like, it's not just a phase, Mom. Okay, 4 years later, it's definitely not a phase still. Many many hours sitting in the basement with like makeup strewn on the floor. I'm smearing like cream on my face with like a random plastic sponge trying to make a beard. I've tried the doll hair thing and that was an absolute no.
It is a disaster.
It absolutely was. I can't remember what I used. It was like a Monster High doll at the time.
It's bad for your sinuses.
It's bad for your skin. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I can actually grow a real beard. It gets stuck in enough to my pores. I don't know. Eventually, I kind of like geared up and I was like, okay, well, what kind of songs am I going to do? And I was like, maybe just pop. So, down the line, I meet you guys and do my first show.
And you did very well for your first show.
I looked horrible.
No, you think you did horrible, but it was really good.
Everybody says that though. I was more conservative than I am today. I did not like showing my body. I was like suits galore. I remember the first thing I bought was this red alligator skin blazer, and I was like, this is me. And then started the addiction for alligator skin, but it was a burlesque show that I started, and Broadway, and I was like a small town kid, very conservative. Burlesque was like not my thing, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, just like take off my clothes. It was a wild win, but it really boosted my confidence. So that was something that I needed, and especially the support from like a bunch of friends. And eventually, like my sister found out, and she like really pushed me to do it more. And it was mind blowing. It really changed my life.
Wow.
The end.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing all of that. I want to turn the conversation to talking about activism in and out of drag, and what are some of the ways, and I'm specifically addressing, well, all of the panelists pretty much, because I know drag is kind of a form of activism in one way or another. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the current climate, especially, for example, drag Storytime. This was part of the reason why we at QHINB chose to do this panel this year, and this topic was, especially with 713, I didn't want drag Storytime and that hatred that's been brewing for it to be forgotten, and it isn't really. I mean, it's all interlinked, but like the writing was on the wall when that was happening, and then now we have 713. So I just want to talk to both. I know Annabelle and Alex have more specifically been vocal and participated in some of that, and I just want to talk to them about the importance of standing up.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I started Drag Storytime as an addition to St. John Pride in, I think, 2015, but I actually have no real concept of time. So if I say the other day, it could be anywhere from an hour ago to, I don't know, since
10 years?
I was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it started in 2015 because one of the biggest problems with St. John Pride for the longest time was lack of family programming. It was very cis male focused. Like, let's have a party on Saturdays. We all can do poppers and, you know, touch each other's butts or whatever they do.
Underwear parties.
Yeah. The things that tend to go on at Pride. No.
Those
shaming.
are fun too.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're fun too. But, you know, sometimes people have kids and those people want to take their kids to stuff. And I think that's really cool. So I started Drag Storytime. I can't even remember where I heard of it from. I just knew that like other prides and other places were doing this. And it felt like a really easy way to be able to include families, queer families in that. Because stories are really for anyone, young or old. Sometimes we get queer people that just show up to listen to stories. I'm talking to someone at Mount Allison about doing one for university students. So now I'm looking at stories that are not just for children. Seniors homes.
Seniors homes.
I would love that. I don't know how to. I need to find someone. Anyway, and so when we first started it, nobody cared. Nobody cared. It was for the Pride community only, and there would be the occasional people that would see the poster in the library, and the biggest worry that we had was the people generally who are a little less fortunate that hang out in the library coming in and taking treats for the kids that are not meant to be for them. They're for the kids. But I mean, you know what? If you need the cookies, do take them. So that was really our only problem with Drag Story Time. We did have one lady in 2017 that they announced it over the PA system, and then she prayed at the door. But Adam at the library was very great about making sure that she was swiftly removed. Like, I didn't even know it happened until after story time. I was like, oh, was there a lady praying at the door? Well, that's very fun.
Praying for a good show.
Yeah. She might have been praying for my eternal soul, and I wish they would stop doing that. So then last year was 2022. 2021 maybe? Yeah, time goes by so fast. In 2021, I think.
That's when you started getting heat.
Yeah. We did a Drag Story Time, and
they used a photo out of context.
Well, not just that. I had in the promotion photo, I had this this shirt that's like leather, but it's like a button-up collared shirt. And I didn't think that it was particularly salacious shirt, but allegedly people are just not as appreciative of pleather as I may happen to be. I think it looks really great. It keeps you warm. It's a very fashionable fabric, and it doesn't actually kill any animals. So I don't see the problem, but allegedly that was very sexual for one or two people, and then they sent it to their friends in Red Deer, Alberta, and then the next thing the library knew, they're getting screamed at every single day, and I'm in trouble, and my friend Blair, who has made the poster and used this picture, gets fired from her job as a social media person at Market Square for using they never gave her a reason, but we suspect it's because she used that picture of me. Anyway, so then once they saw that, they took a bunch of photos out of context. So in addition to reading to kids and being completely appropriate and fully dressed, and I wore the last Drag Story Time I did, not the last one, but that one we got in trouble for. I wore all clothes from Old Navy, and then a vest that I had rhinestoned, and that was just to make sure that no one could get me for wearing anything appropriate, because the thing had blown up over that stupid picture. Anyway, and so then it just starts to amplify from there, and each subsequent Drag Story Time, they're finding more pictures of me. So our Drag Story Time was in the atrium of Market Square during the day. And then we had a closed off private event at Market Square because my friend Blair was working there. So it was a venue that she was giving us for free. They were setting it up with chairs and everything.
It was a 19 plus event.
It was a 19 plus event, and it was after the mall was closed, and it was a ticketed event, and it was 420 themed because I'm stupid.
It was April. I was there.
Yeah, it was April. Anyway, and so my friend Damion does a combination of drag and burlesque. So, there were some pictures of her with her pasties on. And because it was in the same location a month earlier, they tried to say that it was during the Drag Story Time. So then it just started this avalanche of garbage. And as time has passed,
it's getting worse.
It's getting worse. And it's now I never thought that our premier would use Drag Story Time as an excuse to screw around with school stuff for kids, because I'll be honest, I am a 37-year-old person that doesn't have kids and doesn't plan to have kids. So, I guess part of my reading to children is giving back, and because the literacy in New Brunswick is really poor. I used to work, so I grew up in the north end of St. John, which is the poor part of St. John. And I used to work at Pizza Delight. And when I was there, this boy, 12, comes in with his dad, and he goes to order off the kids menu. No big deal. So he goes, "What toppings do you have available for your pizza?" And me, being the lazy 20-something that I was, did not want to read this kid all the toppings. Read it yourself, kid. Well, the reason that he couldn't read it himself is because he couldn't read, and he had his dad read him all the ingredients off the menu. And of course, I felt like a tool. And it was that moment, I think, that kind of like, I don't know, you ever have like a moment that's just like, in the video games, they're like, Alex will remember that. And I did. And so reading to kids to me seemed like a natural way to give back to my Pride community. Doing drag story time is one of the, I mean, I get paid for it now, but I certainly didn't back in the day, and I would still do it for free if it didn't cost me so much gas to get to places. You know, I also like telling the bigots that I get paid for it, because that just really makes them really mad. And it really satisfies my soul. Anyway, so they're getting worse, and now I just guess I get to educate people, you know, by reading to them and stuff, and then I get to educate all of these people who think it's okay to go online and harass people on the internet. Like it's nothing, that if you mess around, eventually you'll find out, because like I used to work in IT. I know how easy it is to mobilize data and mobilize people on the internet to do things. And you know, if they're gonna send, what is it now? How many people are, anyway, it started off with a healthy group of like 8, and now it's like 200 in St. John and like 7,000 outside of the province that are all kind of like against us. So I like to use my position to show what these people are doing. There's a woman in QUISPAM Cis who has literally said like, oh, I wish we could purge them. Talking about me, talking about Barb, talking about queer people in our province on a Facebook Live. And it's these people who just think they can go online and say whatever they want, that they can get away with whatever they want. People taking pictures of me from my Facebook, taking pictures of me from all my social media, which is fine. I put them out there for you to see. Like, I make no qualms about who I am as a performer. But like, stealing pictures off my personal Facebook, stealing pictures of my nieces and nephews, stealing pictures of my friends' children, and reposting them online. Selfies I've taken with my nieces and nephews and friends of children and supporters and things like that, and just spreading them all around. Taking pictures from my shows of our cast with 2 performers that are like 20 years old, blurring out their faces and saying, oh, look at these children at this 19+ drag show. No, they're 20-year-old drag performers, people. Like, the level of harassment is too much. And I think now I just exist to show them that if they're going to use the internet if they're going to utilize the internet to hurt people and harass them, then don't be surprised when you give out your email on a Facebook Live so that you can email people this petition because you, quote unquote, don't know how to start one online because you're too stupid. Her words, not mine.
Oh, and
someone takes that email and they post it on their Instagram Live, and then all of a sudden you have all these queer people emailing you about how you're a jerk. Well, that's not my fault. That's your fault for putting your email on the internet. Like, I know it sounds like tough love, but like, the thing about this is that they can come for us, and if you don't see anything, they're gonna come for you too. And I know that sounds so radical and crazy, but like the amount that we've been harassed, and just seeing like, there's a 16, I think she's 17 now. She keeps getting older. It's awful. Anyway, performer in Moncton, and she was booked in a fest called Diversifest in Sussex. Ugh. Sorry, Sussex, we have bad blood, I'm sorry, but bleh. Anyway, and there was so much hubbub about these 4 drag performers, one of which was Annabelle, going to Sussex and performing a family-friendly number at this Diversifest, that like, her mom was like crying because she was worried about her child. Should some 16-year-old's mother be crying because she's afraid that her kid is going to get assaulted by people that think her kid has no right to exist? Where do we live? Are we living in crazy town? Like, anyway, I'll go on forever. Please, someone else talk.
I have things to say, yeah. So I'm an educator. I turned down 8 full-time teaching jobs this year because I don't have the capacity for both French and English district. I have my criminal record check for the vulnerable sector. I worked for the QHINB, which is an organization that takes care of blind people, for a long time. I take great care of how I treat people, and I've been getting called a pedophile online since April because I read books to children with a wig on at the Moncton Library. I was also featured on Fox News. Yeah, that one. Because I was scaring children in a publicly funded video, because me and my colleague Roast Beef did a video with the CBC called something like Kids React to Drag Queens. And the kids were talking about how they were nervous in the video because there was 5 cameras, one of them moved by itself, a cameraman, 2 drag queens in their school. Like, anyone would be nervous. But they were also asking us questions about how we get our nails pretty. And they made us drawings. And, you know, it was a very heartwarming experience. And it was a very but then the Fox News were like, they're scaring the children. But lucky for us, and lucky for all of us, really, Trump got indicted the same day that article went live. And I received no hate from that one. So 2 positive reasons for Trump getting indicted. He got indicted, 1, and then 2, he kind of gave me and Rose a buffer on that one for the hate, which was kind of nice. I personally have not gone to look at the article. I don't want to. I have seen screenshots. That's enough. I guess the comments are
Spicy.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. I've had to block quite a few people, probably the same ones as you.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, reading, I was bullied a lot as a kid. I was a weird, neurodivergent, undiagnosed queer kid that was really confused. You know, I hid in books. I hid in libraries. I hid in books. I found shelter in books. And I want to share my love of reading with other kids. They see us as princesses and princes. That's it. There's nothing sexual about it. We read books about friendship and taking care of your friends and who's allowed to like pink. Everyone. You know, it's nothing. We're not like, I don't have a magic wand that's going to make your kids trans or gay or they aren't. That I won't change that reading them a book. And I hope parents who listen to this, if your kid comes out to you and you're not accepting, you don't deserve to be that kid's parent. Yeah. Maybe I'm going to get hate for saying that, but
hard truths.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually,
you need to love your kids for who they are.
The hate we've been getting has made me change the stories I read at Drag Storytime. I used to read a lot of like the gay BCs and the hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. I can't read anymore because one of them says shake your bum. Oh my goodness. Anyway, so I started reading different books, and now I've started grabbing books that aren't like necessarily queer in nature, but are rather just written by queer people. So
or like queer coded.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sort of. Like I got John Gratz. He's an TikTok influencer, and he had a 15-year-old pug named Noodle, and Noodle would tell you whether it was a bones or a no bones day, because he'd like pick the pug up, and if the pug flopped over, then it was a no bones day, and you're supposed to take care of yourself on no bones days. And then if the pug stood up, then it's a bones day, and today's the day to get stuff done. And he's a gay man, and so I started adding books that weren't necessarily like L is for lesbian and things like that, but like we're still within the realm, because, you know, as much as I want to teach kids about queerness, I also want the people that are showing up to know that it's not necessarily like this big, like, I don't know.
It's not the gay agenda.
Yeah, it's not the gay agenda.
It's
like
sharing.
I read soup book.
Yeah, one of my favorite books I read is my favorite book as a child, La Soupe au Bouton, and it's about making soup for a community. And sharing. And there's like Uncle Scrooge doesn't want to share the food, and then his niece Daisy convinces him to make enough soup for the community. How radical is that?
Pretty insane.
Clearly makes me a groomer.
John, do you have anything that you also want to add?
I have done drag story times before, and normally for that I would be doing more of the non-binary look, just because if any of the kids, like, if there's anybody in the audience that may not look like one of us, then I could possibly be the person that they could be like, that person kind of looks like me. Like, there was one time that I went full bald, like no hair,
And you know,
to a
like,
drag story time.
you know what it was like as a kid to not have representation.
Right.
We all do.
And that's
Yeah.
like for the aesthetic when I do drag story times, I try to make it so that if anybody is even marginalized in the marginalized community that's already marginalized, and I know, very repetitive, that I can almost, hey, look, that person kind of looks like me right now, or they're trying to represent something that's not quite the same as everything else. So it kind of gives them a little something to like latch onto.
Also, just a small point. When we do drag story times, a lot of parents want us to take photos with their kids. The kid will be sitting on a chair like this, and we're doing double hands visual.
Yeah, if they can see your hands, they know
can't
you're
say
not
anything.
touching their kids.
Meanwhile,
That's our new thing now. Double these or double these. It's awful, but
you put your kids on Santa's lap, and that's a strange man.
yeah, that's a strange cis.
And that's also
problem.
Did they do a
Straight
security
man.
check on that man? Probably not.
No. He's probably drinking booze in the parking lot.
Yeah. So I'm like, where's the difference?
Like Bad Santa. That's a whole movie.
yeah.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Right.
Also, the person inside the Goofy costume at Disney World that you're paying thousands of dollars could be a woman, and that's a boy dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
And
a lot of the
vice
time you see like Daisy or Minnie or whatever, that's a gay man in the costume.
could very much be.
No, you can sometimes
The way they
you can tell,
sashay.
like,
Yeah.
Daisy, like, you know, I know that's a theater student that is just living their best life.
Absolutely.
Annabelle, I want to just turn back to talking about the Acadian drag community and how amazing that's been in New Brunswick of late. But I say of late, but really the Acadian art and culture scene has greatly benefited probably since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
because of gay artists.
Yeah, and before it was a lot of the gays had to kind of hide the gay and just
Yeah.
show the art.
And poets
And
playwrights.
poets and like
Yeah.
Angèle Arsenault was a singer.
Yes.
And a lot of people still to this day might not know that she was a lesbian. She would sing about men a lot of in her songs. She would, perform the correct femininity, but also her lyrics and her songs, like if you look at those, there's a lot of feminism in there. She fights back too, but like it was more hidden. And now, like when I saw that documentary for the first time in June, to see queer, so not just as a French person that's queer, sometimes it feels like you have to make a choice between your queerness and your Frenchness or your Acadianness, because you can go full Acadian and kind of just tuck your queerness back a little bit. Not that our community is not welcoming, but you kind of do have to. Or you can go into the English world where the language is already set up better for non-binariness, and there's already more gay bars, and there's already more queer TV shows. There's more access to queerness in the English world. And to see that double minority of queer Acadians being celebrated, I've never seen that in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited for this film, and I don't think I'm allowed to say something about it. So I will
No
just
spoilers.
yeah.
Well,
NDA.
come out on Thursday night.
Yeah. And we're going to have some of the people that are in the film that are going to be there, and we have some of the producers. And funnily enough, the director of it, Julien Cadieux, we went to high school together. We didn't really know each other in high school, but I danced for his aunt who ran a dance theater. And we were reminiscing about high school, and like he was more visually queer than I was. He couldn't hide it as much as I could, even though I hid it from myself at the time, but that's another story. Like he used to like physically get shoved into lockers, and like my best friend in high school, he used to be called a racial slur, the wrong kind for him, and the F slur while getting thrown chocolate milk things at us and stuff. So like that was my experience of Acadian queerness for me. So to have access to something like this is, I think, just so important.
And now Zav Gould.
Yeah,
and
Sami's TikTok famous, and so is Zav. Zav is doing really good. And their poetry collection, if you haven't read it, I know it's in English, or in Shak, a poetry collection written in Shak. with the phrase "frite mon tu" published on paper. And if you don't know what that means, it means. How honest can I be on this?
Go ahead.
Is there a rating to this? Okay.
Nope.
It basically means eat my asshole. And also, like, I have the merch bag of it. And like Anglophones, they'll just see this and they're like, you know.
Yeah.
But then we know. And like that, to see that printed on paper. And I read a draft last summer of this poetry collection, and it was fine. And then I got a physical copy, and I couldn't read it for about a month because every time I would just see my dialect written on paper, and not from a straight white dude, okay? From a queer person. And yes, I have a very close relationship with them. I do have a bias, but even if I didn't know them, this book was so important. It made me cry every time. It took me a month to get through this much poetry, and I will revisit it. It's so important. And I think there's some beautiful things happening in the queer Acadian world, and I'm really happy to just be a little part of it. It feels like a massive privilege. So yeah, keep watching us shine.
Yes, it's amazing. And now I think Zev and Sammy are also they're hosting a show in Montreal for
They're
Fête
doing a
Montréal.
headline in Fête Montréal. It's called Me Joke 2, which I think is one of the best names for a show. Me Joke 2. It's a comedy drag show. It's perfect.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So again, events this week. Please check them out here in Fredericton. Okay, so I want to sort of talk more about evolution. And again, another question for, well, I guess all panelists too, because I'm sure, Andy, that you have people that are reaching out to you asking you how you do your drag. And
Yes.
But how does it feel for our current performers and John as well too, to watch and to see the evolution of the younger folks? I know
it's fantastic.
Yeah,
to
you've said
watch.
it's fantastic,
Like,
but yeah.
just watching how they start and how they've become already, and knowing that they're only going to get even better as time goes on, and they're going to help impart their knowledge to anyone coming to ask them for help, to me is just like absolutely phenomenal to know.
And drag is a community sport. It's a team sport. We all, like, I consider myself an auntie for a lot of drag performers.
Yeah.
And I am a drag mom to a few people. I don't accept a lot of drag children 'cause it requires quite a bit of work and
I'm like the
attention.
great grandmother in the background.
But I do have a lot of nieces and nephews and nibblings, drag performers across the province that I keep an eye on. And it's a really, we have a great community. We're a little family, and I feel so privileged to be part of it.
Yeah, amazing. And what about you folks?
The evolution over the years is really great to see. Like, I remember when it was just a handful of people, like I said, just like that handful of people, and we've added over
There's
the
so
years.
many.
And it with the different people that we've added, we've also been able to expand venues. So there was the great drag queen separating of 2000 and whatever, whereby we were now split between the boom queens and the cap queens.
Yes.
But that opened up
Capital.
Frida Wales went and opened up the Cap as a venue, and now they run drag shows all the time there. So it was this example of turmoil in our community that now has evolved into merely just having more venues. For a while, Brooke and Trinity wouldn't go to Boom either because he was run by this cis guy. But I believe Trinity was working at the Crown Plaza, and through the Crown Plaza, they met the people who do Anna Maritime, the convention, and now they try to have a drag show at Anna Maritime every year.
Oh, Alex, I did a show this month, or last month, at a Jardine campground in Laricchia. We have done shows everywhere.
Yeah.
Now. Like, venues are opening.
that campground
Seriously.
that's just off of the highway when you get into
And
Capillet.
our back room was a camping bathroom with the
Yeah.
wet floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely.
we recently, I recently ran a show in Woodstock, and
Yeah,
we were the thing to do in Woodstock, like the thing to do that night. And then like seeing all of these, like you said, little French venues in the middle of nowhere, like Equinox brought me to. It wasn't
Shediac?
Oh yeah,
We've done Capillet, we've done
It was
Shediac.
Capillet.
Yeah.
Was the small bar in the middle of nowhere, and then it's the campground in Shediac, which is always really fun. And they always put us on the day where they do the bingo for liquor. They just for like coolers and stuff. They do that. It's like chocolate bar bingo except coolers instead.
Sounds fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Yes.
really. It is. What were we talking about? Oh my
I've got you off topic.
why I sat
Andy,
next to you.
Do you,
Oh, man.
Do you have anyone that's been, who's reached out for tips or?
I get a lot of people who are like considering doing drag and stuff, like a lot
Yeah.
of like younger folks. I'm a trans individual, so I've had like a couple of other like trans individuals like come up to me and just be like, oh my god, like we really want to start as well. And I even like it's just so good to see people like coming into the light of things. That sounds interesting. And seeing like new performers, and like I know I'm still like a baby myself, but just watching like these people that are coming in with like all sorts of other experiences now that society has somewhat opened up versus like when I started. It's just so refreshing to see talent, and even people who have been here for like the longest time and continue to perform have also evolved, which is like inspiring even more people. And it's just like all around like a really good group. Like this community is awesome.
Yeah. I feel like that right now we have the most drag we've ever had in New Brunswick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially
Absolutely.
non-binary drag
Yeah.
too,
Yeah.
which is what I wanted to talk to you and Alex about or ask you about is, how that evolution of your, you said that you started out very masculine, and now there's some things about your persona that's changing.
Yeah, so when I started, as part of the toxic masculinity subsection of drag kings, and then, I don't know, just over time, I just started getting gayer. And now I'm this, I still identify as he, him pronouns in drag. But I use a lot of techniques that, like I said, come from the drag queen world. So I'm contoured as just as much as the queens, and like I've recently got into blush, for example. And by that I mean I've been using the one really bright pink eyeshadow I have as a blush. I haven't bought any blush, but it looks really great. I use clown white for all my highlights, which is something that a lot of drag queens do. And the outfits have also gone from like, there's only so many times you can just wear a suit before you're like, you know what, I don't want to wear a suit anymore. And wear
all the dress shirts, the floral prints.
Where the gender lines are being blurred a lot more in clothing and stuff now. Like a man can
Wear
or
a caftan.
male presenting person can wear a caftan. They can wear a bodysuit. They can wear a thong bodysuit. Like they can wear thigh-high boots. Like there's really, the rules have lessened so much, and that's really allowed my drag to grow in a different direction. And like a lot of cis women see themselves in drag queens. Well, I want men to, like flamboyant men, the bears, like the men of our community, to see themselves reflected in my drag, because I think it's really important to be able to see, I guess, that kind of gender expression done in a sort of drag format.
Can I add
Thank
to
you.
that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Yep.
So for me, Barb was a safe way to explore femininity. It was always, so it wasn't forced on me. I could, it's a costume. I can take it off as soon as I get home, because gender is confusing and I'm not sure what mine is. So, but through Barb, and then Barb kind of informs me on who she is and who she wants to be in the least crazy way possible. So like, I like to think that she's an alien that came to Earth to figure out what womanhood is. And it's important to me that she never quite gets it right. She sees the ideal women as like a Vanna White, a weather woman from the 80s. And then she has in her mind that that's the womanhood. And then like just recently this spring, I was at a show and I was just walking around and it hit me that Barb would have an MLM business. And she would fully believe that she is a businesswoman that has started her own real business selling moldy leggings or something. She informs me as much as I inform her. Like it's in the least, I'm not insane way possible.
Well,
Absolutely.
thank you. Yeah, those are all really good points.
I could totally relate to that, absolutely, because
Yeah.
like Damion was like very much like, I agree with you on the toxic masculinity stage. I mean, I was just coming out of high school. All I saw were like hoit boys and like them. You had like the John Deeres and you had the jocks, and I was like somewhere in between because that's all I knew.
And look at you tonight, you're Indiana Jones.
Right?
Yeah. I don't know.
And then, on Saturday you were like guy with a mullet plus booty shorts plus bathing
It was
suit.
what was it? It was a Bud Light drinker who drives a Ford truck. That's my inspiration.
With
I found like kind of like relating to you and about Blaze, like where I started like my transition the same like year I turned 19. I found that Damion was a way to like explore my masculinity and to finally see myself for who I could be in the future. And it was just so fun. And of course, like Damion Danger, and like I had to get some kind of dangerous in there at some point. And like over time, it's definitely progressed. Yeah, doing flips and tricks and stuff, but it scared me ages ago. Then I finally learned how to do the splits.
On pavement outside.
Yeah, no, hard pass.
Many a prides, my knees weak, arms are heavy, mom spaghetti, yes.
And like for me as a gender fluid person, Justin was always like, I've always found a lot of power in my masculinity because when I was younger, like I was uncomfortable with femininity, and I guess to some degree I could say that sometimes I still am. I mean, you can see my boobs. I don't hide them or anything. Like, they're there. And I mean, I guess my hair is long, so that translates to woman for a lot of people. But I find now, like, when I do lean into more feminine aspects of myself, like I see that femininity is like something sacred that I only really share with a few people. So like, I feel like I'm at my most powerful when I'm this kind of hybrid between like my most masculine self with just enough femininity to make myself feel pretty.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So
just
it's,
like,
yeah. So a lot of people don't realize, and I know that sometimes when you're like, because I've met trans people who were really upset about drag and they didn't like it and they felt like it invalidated their, I don't know, transition, or it was like a parody of their gender or something like that. And I don't think people realize just the amount of outreach we do. Like, think of every venue owner who wanted to ask offensive questions. They are asking your drag performers and we are answering so that you don't have to do that
much
effort,
Right?
we
noticed that
are
too.
raising trans people who use drag as a way to explore the gender. Like, for example, Angelica Good, who started off as this like awkward 17-year-old kid that we used to sneak into bars to be a bimbo sometimes, and now she's a professional top 1% on OnlyFans businesswoman who has fully transitioned into the most gorgeous model that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes.
And we raised that woman from a little bitty,
She's
not
my
yet a
little
woman,
sister.
to
dropped her off
Britney
at-
Spears,
I dropped her off at a porn set before.
full-grown woman. Yes.
Call me
Yes.
if you're, I'll come. Call me if you're weird. Anything's weird, I'll come.
And
Don't
so
worry.
like it's just there is this inherent camaraderie between the trans people that float through the drag community and I guess our cisgender performers, because it's like, I don't know, it's the ultimate hand holding. So
And just in
it's
case-
never us trying to like invalidate anyone's gender. A lot of people really do use it as like solace, because in our community it's
an exploration.
an exploration. It's socially acceptable there to put on wigs and stockings and stuff and kind of play around with it before you get into the serious business of like, who am I?
And just in case anyone's confused between the difference of drag and trans, because I know some people are, and people may be watching at home, because I know that's going to be online. It's a very easy way to remember. Drag is performance. Yep. It's like Mrs. Doubtfire, right? You put it on, you take it off. Trans is who you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the easiest way to remember. Trans is who you are every day. Barb is not who I am every day. That'd be exhausting.
And that's a really good way of describing it. I'm conscious of the time, so I'm going to wrap up. I mean, I could let you guys go for hours, and it would be amazing. And I'd like to thank our lovely audience for being so patient. Just if you have any short reflections that you just want to leave us with, or also if you want to comment too on the photos. I showed you the photos before you started, and if you have any thoughts about them. And I think Adam's... They were flashing behind us.
They were.
We did get to see them before you all got here, though. Aren't they special? Drag in the 60s and
They're
here.
up right now.
Like, and they're dated and they have the names on them, which is incredibly lucky for.
I love the AKA
And this is stuff
Florence.
that I didn't know. Like,
Same here.
Drag is very much so. We talk about like queer culture. Drag is very much like an art made by us for our community.
Yeah.
So the techniques of drag, well, now all over YouTube. At one point in time, or just passed down mouth to mouth. It's like an oral tradition, just like any other.
That's how I learned.
I
by
guess,
sitting down next to other artists and just
culture that you would have. Like, I've learned so much from other drag artists just by being around them. Like, when Heather told me that you're supposed to put a little bit of glue on top of the lash so that you can stick it to your upper lids that doesn't fall down like this, so you can actually see when you drive home.
And also, there's this incredible book that was written by Meredith. Is it Blatt or Bath?
It's Batt.
Batt and Dusty Green. And in it, they show how in the army, here, army men would do drag shows to entertain each other during the war. Huh. Isn't that interesting? I just thought I'd bring that up. There's evidence in Lennon Cub. You should go grab your copy today.
Yes.
Thanks for the plug. I want to open up the floor for questions from our audience, but there's some people that I need to thank. None of this work could get done without our lovely summer intern, Adam. So thank you.
With the most beautiful hair.
Yes, stunning hair, stunning
Fabulous.
locks.
Oh, I like her. Right. In the
And we're very grateful to Pride. I'd also like to give a big shout out to the QHINB board, who this wouldn't be possible. So thank you to our board members. Joanna Aitenker, the new director at of the archives, the Provincial Archives, and who else? Who am I missing?
Thank you,
Michael,
Meredith.
our wonderful person, Michael, who helped set up the filming for this. So thank you, Michael. Thank you to our lovely audience who is here. Thank you to our wonderful panelists. I mean, you folks were fantastic tonight, so thank you. And you can see them perform later this week. So at the different Pride events, or in St. John Pride, which is in August.
Yeah,
So
first week of August after the long weekend.
Yeah, we're doing
Actually,
a bingo.
This weekend, I'm going to be in Halifax for... Well, nobody knows if Halifax Pride is happening, so their drag community just stepped up and are
just
now running 2 weeks of events
Nice.
and a parade all on their own just because they didn't release the information soon enough. So I'm going to be in Halifax for 2 days, one at the Snatch Game and one at the Halifax Drag Kings show, which is
nice.
very special for me because those were some of the drag kings. We watched each other grow up and learned from each other from afar without ever talking to one another. So,
Secretly admiring and all that.
And
secret admirers.
I just also want to say too, QHINB wouldn't be able to do the work that it does without the drag community. We're immensely lucky. We've received a number of donations this year from really hardworking queens and kings, and Annabelle has even helped to host a fundraiser that we did that someone from Renaissance College put on. which was amazing.
Super fun.
Got her whole family to chip in. This one particular intern from Renaissance College got her whole family to donate funds so that the drag queens could all have some reimbursement.
We love getting paid.
Yeah, so, and that's always important. Support your queens and kings and
theys and
theys and thems, exactly.
Drag creatures and everything.
Costs a lot of money to look this cheap.
It's true.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open up the floor. Michael, I don't know if it makes more sense for me to hold my mic near someone when they're talking so it gets picked up on camera, but I can do that if no one's opposed. So if we have any questions, you can stand or sit.
Not everyone at once.
Yeah. It's also okay if you don't have any questions, too.
Absolutely.
That's
You
all
can
right.
give us compliments.
No judgments.
Oh, Reed has one.
Are you okay if I hold the microphone semi-close to you? Okay.
My question is for Annabelle. So I love Barb Wire's crochet costumes, and I was just wondering if you could talk about how you incorporate like those kind of artistic projects into your costumes. Like, is there inspiration that you draw from other artists, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so for the last 3 years, I've done one head-to-toe crochet look, and I try to do better than the year before. This is a self-imposed competition I have with myself. And I do one a year because they take about 3 months to make. Crochet is not fast. I have to make my fabric and then put it together. But that's something I really love, and I love the creativity of drag. I've always been an artist. I've always been a maker. My grandma taught me how to knit when I was little, and then I taught myself how to crochet on YouTube like 15 years ago. You can learn anything on there now. Mm-hmm. And I'm a busy hands person. That's how I relax. That's how I unwind. So it also helps my mental health to an incredible degree. But also it's so fun. Like the look I made this year, I'm getting it professionally shot next month. So you'll see it on my socials and stuff. But I made chaps and a little, like a cowgirl vest. And it's African violets all the way down the legs, and they're different colors. And I started it in January. I finished it May. So, and I started taking commissions. I started making headpieces too. I've made a tentacle wig. Like, you can do anything with drag, which is so exciting. Actually, I was telling this to students one day. I spoke to all the students of National Access Middle School in grade 6 last year, and I was telling them that there's no rules to drag. And one little boy in the front very concernedly asked me if that meant I was allowed to punch people. And I quickly went, no. Like, human decency rules still apply. I'm not going to start drop kicking children. What I mean is the creativity. You could do anything. You can be a sexy banana as a drag queen if you want. I've done it.
I was going to say, didn't you do that look
once? I was Sexy Big Bird last year, and I think this year for Halloween I may be Sexy Gru, the villain from Despicable Me, with like the long nose, but like lingerie maybe? I don't know. We'll see. But like there's so much to play with creativity, and I love the yarn. I try to put it in anywhere. It gets hot though. The chaps I made out of cotton yarn, though. I'm getting smarter.
Thanks so much for your question. Is there anyone else?
Natalie.
Well, it's not a question, but I'll pick up on Annabelle's, and I will say thank you to all of you, because you're such a supportive community, and it was a completely new world for me. And I'm so glad that my child can be a part of their community.
We love your kid.
Yeah, we do love your kid. Happy to have them.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, and with that, I'd like to invite everyone to join us for some light refreshments. We've got some squares and some juice so that we're going to be putting out, so feel free to stick around. And thanks again, everybody, for coming. on this gray summer's evening, when you could be doing other things. It's awesome. So support your kings, queens, theys, and thems.
Yay.
Happy Pride,
Thank
everybody.
you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Happy Pride. Be safe. Be gay. Do crimes.
Yeah.
Fight
Yes,
the
all the-
patriarchy.
Please continue to be allies.